This is a city of many cultures and many faiths. This is a city my family call home. Once upon a time, my granddad sailed his way through to the docks, looked up to the liver birds and said, "Here we will settle." My grandma followed and they opened their first corner shop business on Lawrence Road, selling broken biscuits for half a penny, like so many other Yemenis did. Then my father came along listening to the Beatles and dancing to his favorite jazz music. And I grew up on the streets of Toxteth telling everybody that I am a proper Scouser and then British, because there is a difference. We are our own country in our unique accent, a rich history and a culture of many. This is my story, and like so many others who made it and settled in the beautiful city of Liverpool. But there are many other stories. Liverpool is a home to migrants, refugees, asylum seekers, and I have worked with them and heard their stories, their journeys and their struggles. Like the girl who once said, "In flesh I am awake. I am moving, but I have no choice but to travel with the speed of the wind and the speed of the warplanes that fly over our skies, and I am alive as I engrave in tears, and tomorrow could be the end of this chapter, but I will carry on till this pen leaks through my veins. I, the victim that writes, and you that follows the pen that writes, and I am the pen that carves tears waiting to drop at sea. But don't forget my mental state. Because you can't see it does not mean it's not happening. It is all up there, and the horrors of the war has shattered my dreams, and I'm mentally drained, and I saw my home reflecting in my eyes, yearning for our freedom, the freedom that was tarnished by war. And no matter how many times I erase these bad memories, the ones that grip around my neck, press against my chest, and I'm finding it hard to breathe. Pull me out. Pull me out. I need to breathe a little more, to say so much more. So much to say. I don't have much space. My mind is occupied. I'm a busy human being finding ways to survive. And remember I, the victim that writes, and you that follows the pen that writes, and remember my childhood memories, because I seem to forget. And I fail. Insanity began before I entered the outer world, the world of responsibility and consequences, and I'm tired. I'm tired in a world that does not understand, and I always dreamt to live amongst the stars, and today I beg to live with the stars, and as I write in darkness, I hope my words are clear, because my heart refuses to lie, and share my story, and let my words flow like the river of dreams, and let my words reach the ears that know little, and let my words reach the hearts that have become disheartened, and let my words soften the hearts that have ignored the tongue that sacrificed its voice for our freedom. I share this story, a monologue, to remind myself and everyone here to not forget those who are left behind, those victims of war and displacement, those who have no choice but to leave with their homes on their backs. Here amongst us are politicians, health policy makers, researchers, civil society, World Health Organization, donors, students, but most importantly, humans, because we are human first. So let's use our time here and our research to empower the people who need it most, the people who are always left behind. Thank you so much for listening, and I hope you enjoy your time here in Liverpool.
So greetings and love to each and everyone. Welcome to Liverpool. This is a city fit to live in. You can go anywhere in the world and say you're from Liverpool, and nobody will say, "Where's that?" That's true. Because in Liverpool, we make things happen. So welcome. I'm going to share a piece with you now. And when I say a city unique in many ways, I would like you to chant Liverpool on Merseyside. Yeah? So a city unique in many ways, Liverpool on Merseyside. Hey. All right. All right. So, she is a city fit to live in. She's in a healthy place to be. You'll never walk alone with a dose of Scouse hospitality. She's a city that is thriving. She's got a ticket to ride. She's a city unique in many ways. On Merseyside. Fantastic. A royal charter was granted in 1207, and ever since that time, Liverpool has been driven European capital city of culture in 2008. This was an invitation for the world to come and celebrate. A city steeped in history, a city known worldwide. She brought wealth and prosperity to Britannia beyond Merseyside. In the transatlantic slave trade, you played a major part. You were the main blood vessel that pumped the wealth into Britain's heart. A chapter of brutality like the world has never seen, trading in cotton, rum, tobacco, sugar, and also human beings. A maritime city, a major seaport where merchants became filthy rich from the goods they sold and bought. So, from the goods they sold and bought. So the foundation was established. And the merchants, they got paid. Liverpool became the pool of life. Yes, Liverpool was made. Now Liverpool is standing tall for all the world to see. A city rich in heritage and culture. Yes, the world in one city. She is a city fit to live in. She's in a healthy place to be. You'll never walk alone with a dose of Scouse hospitality. She is a city that is thriving. She's got a ticket to ride. She's a city unique in many ways, Liverpool on Merseyside. Now, Scouse is an identity in name, character, and culture. Scousers are known across the land for their language, their dish, and their nature. Europe's oldest black community and oldest Chinese community too. The largest Irish community outside of Dublin completes our cultural stew. The 60s was a magical time when Liverpool was rocking. Our talent shone in the limelight and fame just kept on knocking. Comedian, writers, and actors, we've got them by the score. An adventurous city that speaks its mind, you couldn't ask for anything more. But then the dread times came and you lost your fame. They say it was unemployment, militants, and riots that tarnished your name. Then the Hillsborough disaster struck like a major heart attack. Finally, justice was served, and so the city bounced back. Now a World Heritage Site in the company of a select few. You rose like a phoenix from the ashes, because that's what Scousers do. Creativity is our forte. Medicine for mind, body, and soul. We have a passion that burns like fire to inspire. That is our goal. She is a city fit to live in. She's in a healthy place to be. You'll never walk alone with a dose of Scouse hospitality. She's a city that is thriving. She's got a ticket to ride. She's a city unique in many ways. Liverpool on Merseyside. We have world-renowned musicians, entertainers in the sound of Mersey beat. We also have two cathedrals that adorn Oak Street. Our famous liver birds, which are perched on the liver clocks, the Adelphi Hotel, St. George's Hall, the King and the Albert Docks. At football, we are outstanding in the way we play the game. Liverpool FC and Everton FC have success as their middle name. Our galleries, museums, and theaters, they all take center stage. Central Library with its technology takes the city into a brand new age. Sail the ferry across the Mersey, check out the famous skyline. And if you want a classical treat, visit the Philharmonic Hall. The experience is sublime. The Grand National, Lymph, Africa Oye, positive vibration and writing on the wall. And if you feel like you need some retail therapy, visit Liverpool 1, you can do it all. A film set for LA production, television dramas, movies and documentaries, the Super Lamb Banana, the Shanghai Arch, the parks, Lipa and the universities. So I'm calling BBC Radio Merseyside and Radio City to air a view or two, just to say you'll never walk alone in my Liverpool home, and Liverpool, that's why I love you. Yes, Liverpool, that's why we love you. Thank you very much. One love, one heart. Enjoy. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Please join me in giving a hand for our Liverpool poets, Amina Atiq and Levi Tafari. I'm Sally Theobald. I'm from the Liverpool School of Tropical Medicine, and I'm co-chair of the Executive Committee for HSR 2018. And it is my pleasure and delight to welcome you to Liverpool, to this conference, on behalf of the UK Organising Committee. So we are a consortium of UK institutions, academia, public health and NGOs, and you'll find all the names of everyone involved in your programme. So we gather today in a set of strategic anniversaries. So 2018 marks 70 years of our UK National Health Service. It's a time of reflection and critical review of the opportunities and challenges. It also marks 40 years since Alma Ata, and lots of links with the discussions we'll be having, and we've started having, around community health systems and leaving no one behind. And it is also 10 years since Liverpool was awarded European City of Culture. And those of you who were here over the weekend will have seen the Giants, which is part of the celebrations. We also have Liverpool Biennial Art with the theme, Beautiful World, Where Are You? There's art all over the city in unusual and surprising places. It's all free. Do go and enjoy it. So we've enjoyed, and from LSTM, we've been very privileged to host a vibrant, brilliant set of emerging voice cohort with us. I had the privilege of attending the pre-conference on Saturday. The presentations were outstanding. Lots of discussion around power, positionality, gender, and the nuance and the challenges that we face as a community. And it was great to see the links with the Health Systems Global Thematic Working Group. And the Emerging Voices had a Health Systems Day where they went to see our National Health Service in action. They went to see community organisations in Liverpool in action. And this was the 6th cohort of Emerging Voices. So I would like to ask everyone that has ever been an emerging voice to stand up and make some noise, please. Thank you. So a massive part of our community and a really exciting initiative. We will also have the opportunity to showcase action on health systems and civil society action here in the next 3 days. So we are having a community corner with different organisations coming in every day, speaking to the themes of the conference. So do please come and engage and interact with Liverpool organisations. And another innovation we have at HSR 2018 is Photo Voice. So we had brilliant photo voice submissions. They're all displayed in the walkway within the arena, and will also be, there's a film of all the photo voice exhibitions, which is at the Liverpool Museum on the other side of the Albert Dock, so that our broader Liverpool community can interact with that. And finally, I want to say, please enjoy the conference, the sessions, the experience sharing, the strengthening of a community, and enjoy Liverpool. As we've seen from our poets, it's a special city, a strong sense of identity, Scousers, which they both referred to. The people of Liverpool are political, friendly, funny, love to entertain. It's a city that will not disappoint. And my final word is to say that there are postcards around, so please do look at those. Very excitingly announce the dates of the 2020 HSR conference, and what these postcards are for you to write down your suggestions of what the theme should be in Dubai. So please add your voice, write down your suggestions. It's now my pleasure to invite Kabir Sheikh to say some welcome words. Kabir is the chair of Health Systems Global. He's also policy advisor for the Alliance of Health Policy and Systems Research. Thank you very much.
Honorable guests, ladies and gentlemen, it's my great pleasure to welcome you to the 5th Global Symposium on Health Systems Research on behalf of Symposium co-sponsors Health Systems Global, the Alliance for Health Policy and Systems Research, and the World Health Organization. It's wonderful to be here in vibrant Liverpool, and I thank our local hosts for the warm and gracious welcome that we've all had. Over the next 3 days of the symposium, we will have 125 parallel sessions, including oral presentations selected through open competition, poster viewing sessions involving 447 posters, several launches, and special sessions organized by Health Systems Global's 10 thematic working groups, all under the symposium theme, Health Systems for All in the SDG era. The 4 plenary sessions will each focus on one sub-theme of the conference: leaving no one behind, engaging the private sector, multisectoral action, and community health systems. As Sally mentioned, the 5th Symposium commemorates anniversaries of 2 events that have shaped global thought and action on health systems the world over: the Alma Ata Declaration on primary healthcare and the birth of the UK National Health Service. Both teach us that we need to combine socially relevant science with effective, accountable, and inclusive institutions on our path to the attainment of better health and equity. These are the very ideas that have given rise to the field of health systems research. And as such, the lessons of Alma Ata and the achievements of the NHS have been foundational to this field and are, in a way, responsible for all of us being here together today. It's a matter of great pride for us that this symposium is more diverse than ever before, with delegates from over 140 countries participating. There's a special program for policymakers who are our champions for the use of health systems research evidence, so a big welcome to them. We also have a first-time initiative, the Media Fellows Program, involving professional journalists representing diverse geographies, each with a special interest in health systems. Do watch out for them during the symposium. They will be contributing to sessions and reporting on the discussions and debates taking place. And on Friday, one of the Media Fellows will receive Health Systems Global's first ever Media Fellowship Award for the winning feature, which has been published ahead of the symposium. 2 years ago, when we met for the 4th Global Symposium in Vancouver, we explored the theme of resilient and responsive health systems. And one of the key themes that emerged from that symposium, which was captured in the Vancouver statement, was as follows: we should strive for health systems resilience so that the burden of that resilience does not fall on common people, especially the most vulnerable. That lesson has become even more evident today, and we hope to take some of those conversations forward as we explore our first sub-theme, how health systems should leave no one behind. New forms of vulnerability are continuing to emerge, creating new populations at risk. Environmental degradation, widening income inequality, the epidemic of non-communicable diseases, fueled by multiple commercial determinants of health, and social and political exclusion carry huge risks for people's health. And we need to think anew about how health systems can tackle these risks. The Me Too movement has shown us that even the most privileged among women have not been spared from cultures of sexual harassment and exploitation. The intersectional approach, which was explored in the previous symposium but will also find a place here, tells us that this is only the tip of the iceberg. And we need to go deeper to understand and to tackle the true extent of gender-based discrimination and violence, especially on the well-being of poor women with less recourse to systems of accountability the world over. As we look back and take stock of what happened in the past 2 years, we must also have an eye to future health systems. It is estimated that in a mere 12 years, the African continent will have 6 megacities of more than 10 million. And in 30 years, 56% of its population will reside in cities. The world over, urbanization and private commerce are synergistic, and we are likely to see a considerable expansion of private healthcare markets. Technology, too, is becoming more and more accessible and is transforming the way that people seek care. With these scenarios of expanding choice, needs to come a focus on stewarding these markets effectively and bringing greater accountability. For this, it will be necessary to find ways to engage with the private sector effectively, which is our second sub-theme. Our third sub-theme is on multisectoral action. And amid the multiple sustainable development goals that inspire us, the core message for us is very simple. Health interventions and systems reforms must be designed for us to be responsive to the lives of people. And for that, a multisectoral approach is inevitable. People's lives and needs are not neatly divisible. Economic and gender empowerment must go hand in hand with health, as should action on the environment, water, nutrition, and infrastructure, for example. And for this to succeed, it must be achieved in partnership with communities and with their leadership, which is our fourth sub-theme. I hope you'll enjoy the next 3 days of cutting-edge learning and exchange on how we can move each of these agendas forward and build health systems for all in the SDG era. We've also come together today inspired by the power and relevance of this field of health systems research. I invite you all to come forward and help us to advance this important field. Become a member of Health Systems Global, if you wish. Join our thematic working groups, participate in our webinars and meetings. If you've had an abstract accepted for the symposium and would like to write it up as a full research paper, do consider submitting to the special issue of the Health Policy and Planning Journal on the theme of the symposium. And if you're early in your career, do be sure to get in touch with the exciting Emerging Voices group and ask how you can be involved. I would also like to welcome all symposium delegates to the Health Systems Global Annual General Meeting, which will take place at lunchtime on Thursday. All are welcome. Do come and share your thoughts on how we can do even more to create, share, and apply knowledge to strengthen health systems the world over. After these opening remarks, it's my pleasure to introduce to you our next speaker, the Right Honourable Alistair Burt, MP, Minister of State for International Development and Minister of State for the Middle East at the Foreign and Commonwealth Office. Minister Burt entered Parliament for the first time in 1983 and was elected MP for North East Bedfordshire in 2001. From May 2015 until July 2016, he served as Minister of State for Community and Social Care at the Department of Health. Previously, he has served as Parliamentary Under-Secretary of State in the Foreign and Commonwealth Office. We're delighted to have him join us at the symposium. Minister Burt, welcome to the podium.
Kabir, thank you very much indeed. Conference, Your Excellencies, ladies and gentlemen, I'm honoured to be giving this speech at the opening of the 5th Global Symposium on Health Systems Research. I'm delighted to welcome to the UK this extraordinary gathering of researchers, policymakers and practitioners from, as you've heard, over 140 countries. Many congratulations to the organisers of this impressive event. Now, my notes say here, I'm proud that this symposium is taking place in the UK. I'm a Mancunian. I have to revise this slightly and say how proud I am that this is taking place in Liverpool. If you watched the football over the weekend, it was the Manchester game that was the most exciting. United have more league championships, but not quite enough European Cups yet. As someone who was born and brought up about 40 miles away, I'm immensely proud of the north of England and immensely proud of the contribution that Liverpool has made to it over the centuries. It's wonderful that you're here, and I want to say that very clearly from the bottom of my heart. It's great to see everybody here, and I thought the renditions of poetry that we had earlier on said everything you wanted to know about this city, with its diversity, with its heart, with its character, and with its immense affection for people. You couldn't be in a better place. The United Kingdom's commitment to reducing extreme poverty and building prosperity and security globally is long-standing. We continue to dedicate 0.7% of our national income to supporting these goals, understanding that a healthy, productive population is not only valuable in its own right, but also the foundation for economic growth and development. It's also appropriate that this symposium is in the UK, given our long track record of funding health systems research, both locally and globally. This support is testament to the UK's commitment to the Sustainable Development Goals for health, including universal health coverage. And I'm very proud to be wearing the SDG badge. I hope that many of you out there have that, but if not, if you can secure one, please wear one. A lot of people do bump up against me every now and again and say, what is it? It gives you a chance to explain what it is, what we're committed to, and how proud we are of our commitment to those goals. The UK's approach to research is to foster collaboration, build stronger partnerships, and share learning across low, middle, and high-resource settings. And this symposium offers the opportunity to do just that. It's a reflection of the importance we place on research, that we spend more than 3% of DFID's budget on it, with health accounting for the biggest share, over £100 million spent on health research last year. We view the products of DFID-funded health research, many of which will be displayed here at the symposium, as a global public good that can drive evidence-based policymaking worldwide. And I understand that at least 40 sessions this week will feature DFID-funded research. And equally, I'm very pleased to see other UK government funders, including the Medical Research Council, the National Institute for Health Research, through its Global Health Research Programme, complementing DFID in supporting new global partnerships that will drive knowledge to strengthen health systems. So why are we here? We're coming together this week to make a difference, to make stronger health systems and universal health coverage a reality. Our shared ambition is that all people, especially the poor and marginalised, can access good quality essential services without falling into financial hardship. As we have heard, 2018 marks the 70th anniversary of the establishment of the National Health Service, one of the world's finest and first initiatives towards universal health coverage. My father spent his life in the National Health Service as a family doctor. My brother has just retired as an anaesthetist in the health service. My children were all born under the National Health Service, as was my granddaughter, and as a family, we don't carry private health insurance. That's our commitment to the NHS, and I was very proud to be a minister there for a year. One of the National Health Service's fundamental values is equitable access, care that is free at the point of use so that no one is left behind. Leave no one behind is a core theme of the symposium, and we all need to learn from each other how we can uphold this principle. We carry those UK values forward into the global arena through our strong commitment to Global Goal 3, to make healthy lives and well-being for all at all ages a reality. At DFID, we do this by supporting countries to lead their health sector, take other measures to improve health and well-being, and to build partnerships so that resources, whether domestic or aid-funded, are spent effectively. We work at the global level across a range of key multilaterals, such as the World Health Organization and other UN agencies, the development banks, the international funds, such as Gavi and the Global Fund, as well as working with civil society, research institutions, foundations, and the private sector. Our aim is to build an effective global partnership, moving us all towards achieving the shared goal of universal health coverage. And I should add that aid funding not only brings benefit to other countries, but is also in the UK's own national interest by supporting better health globally. What helps other countries to protect and improve the health of the poorest is a win-win for the United Kingdom, whether by combating antimicrobial resistance, preventing the spread of serious disease outbreaks, or using new technologies developed with aid funding in our own National Health Service. So it's fitting, as I said, that this symposium is in Liverpool. This city is a prime example of how building strong health systems underpinned by research makes a difference. When the city was expanding rapidly in the 1800s, just like down the M62 in Manchester, investment in what works, clean water, decent housing, sanitation and health services brought the epidemics of that time, cholera, TB, typhoid and diphtheria, to an end and dramatically extended life expectancy. We should not forget the pioneers of public health in Victorian England and what they achieved, particularly in the north of England. And I'm sorry I won't be listening to John's remarks a little bit later, but I'm very keen to pick them up and get a copy of what he has to say to you. Over time, improved mother and child health services, including safer childbirth and greater equality for women, as well as safe and nutritious food and clean air, were added, all elements of a strong and resilient health system. As population needs have changed and new challenges have arisen, such as aging now and chronic disease, we can't be complacent. Our health systems have to adapt continually. I'm particularly pleased to learn that this week you will be considering how to work more effectively with sectors beyond the health sector to prevent ill health and premature death. Equally, I'm pleased that the symposium is focusing on how to harness the potential of private sector providers, often the first port of call for the poor when they're ill, to achieve the greatest health impact. The global challenge of better health for all is still with us. So why focus on health systems research in making progress towards universal health coverage? What's the role of research? Let me offer 3 observations. Firstly, research is needed to support governments to make evidence-based choices on what works. Strong and resilient health systems must deliver quality services for all, especially those at risk of being left behind. This includes delivering in very poor and fragile and often conflict-affected places, places where health needs are often the greatest. It includes deciding how to and what to fund to meet people's most pressing health needs and what is most cost-effective in any specific context. It includes mobilizing communities to deliver for the most underserved populations, poor women and men, people with disabilities, adolescents. As an example, in Uganda, a research project funded by UK Aid has set up a Safe Deliveries project. This looks at whether the effects of a combination of transport vouchers and maternal services, with improved training of health workers and the provision of essential equipment, drugs and supplies, increased women delivering in a health facility. I'm pleased to say the findings are promising, with the number of women delivering a child in a health facility more than doubling. Secondly, research is needed to develop and deliver innovative technologies, drugs, vaccines, diagnostics, family planning, that are affordable and easy to use. Critically, it's not only research into new technologies that matters, but also research into the best way of making sure these innovations reach those who need them. With the pace of advances in new technology, including digital technologies, the opportunities are literally immense. Digital technology, for example, has the potential to transform how information and services are delivered. I'm sure that many of you are making important contributions to this learning. At DFID, we care about tackling the persistent diseases of the poorest who are always left behind. Where market failure demands both public and private investment, we can step in. Just last year, the Foundation for Innovative New Diagnostics developed a new diagnostic for sleeping sickness that's affordable and easy to use in settings with minimal infrastructure. A new treatment for this horrible disease is currently going through final stages of approval. I'm proud that these two innovations that the UK has helped to fund will be major steps forward towards eliminating sleeping sickness. And thirdly, to be effective, research evidence must reach and make sense to policymakers in government and to practitioners on the front line. This is perhaps the most relevant aspect to this symposium. It's not an easy task. Communicating the findings of research and making it relevant to policymakers and to people like me is a persistent challenge. So I'm pleased that this symposium is playing an important role in breaking down barriers between researchers and policymakers and implementers. But where the links are made, research can have huge impacts. In Ethiopia, for example, the evidence from a UK aid-funded programme for improving mental health care has increased the delivery of mental health care services in research districts from 0 to over 400 visits each month. This evidence now has national impact in the new Ethiopian mental health strategy, which includes the scale-up of mental health care to every district by 2020. So this symposium is one of a number of important meetings leading up to the high-level meeting on universal health coverage at the UN General Assembly next year, 2019. The series includes the World Health Summit next week in Berlin, which unfortunately I'm unable to attend, but we can build on the success of this meeting as the year progresses. Along with the Bill and Melinda Gates Foundation, DFID chose to be a gold sponsor of this symposium. DFID's aim is for researchers, policymakers and practitioners, current and future, to come together from many different countries and backgrounds to further build commitment to a shared goal. And so I'm especially pleased to see so many young faces here as well. This symposium is a unique opportunity for progress, and one that I encourage you all to grasp. Learn from each other at the huge array of sessions on offer, generously share your knowledge and experience, and build a global network to make universal health coverage a reality for all. At a time when multinational institutions are under threat and multilateralism seems to have gone off the boil a bit, we can demonstrate that as far as global health is concerned, those multilateral organizations really matter, because universal healthcare matters to all. It's for all our safety, it's for all our benefit, and the United Kingdom will do all it can to stand up for the values that are encompassed by it. I hope you have a wonderful symposium. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much to Minister Burt, who now has to sadly leave us. And I would now like to welcome John Ashton to the stage. John Ashton is the Specialist Advisor for WHO Europe Healthy Cities Network. He's the City of Westminster Council and the Royal Borough of Kensington and Chelsea Interim Director of Public Health, and he is from Liverpool. Welcome.
Well, thank you very much, and welcome everybody, and thank you, Minister, for such a stimulating speech. Distinguished guests, colleagues and friends, it's a particular pleasure for me to deliver this talk to such an influential gathering in my hometown. A town that can lay claim to being the home of Victorian public health, home to the first school of tropical medicine, and one of the originators of the World Health Organization Healthy Cities Project in 1986. 32 years later, this initiative has spread around the world with networks of collaborating cities, towns, and villages. In each WHO region, there are networks now to be found, and over 1,000 cities and towns in Europe alone, in over 30 national networks. What does this mean for global health, for this conference, and for each delegate here, and when you return home? When a small group of us sat around a Copenhagen table on a snowy day in January 1986, we had no way of knowing that the proposed Healthy Cities project would acquire such momentum. The impulse for the project came from a convergence of thinking in the early 1980s that had its roots in a growing disillusionment with the hospital-dominated health policy that had taken place since the end of World War II. The emergence of new public health thinking can be traced particularly to the Alma Ata Declaration on the need to reorientate healthcare towards primary healthcare grounded in public health, which in turn led to the WHO strategy of Health for All by the year 2000. This was much influenced by the publication of the report Health by the People by the late Ken Newell, latterly of the Liverpool School of Tropical Medicine. At that time, I was working in Liverpool with a regional responsibility for health promotion and public health. This gave me the opportunity of putting together an innovative team to tackle the serious threats to public health in the city region at that time, and to put some of the new thinking into action. Partnership working, public engagement, and community action, together with primary health care, were at its heart. Not least among the challenges was the threat of HIV/AIDS in the face of a perfect storm of a collapsing urban economy, mass youth unemployment, a flood of heroin on the streets, and the arrival of the HIV virus in 1984. By taking prompt action in the form of the first large-scale syringe exchange program in the world, we kept the virus out of the drug-injecting population, and we set an example of what came to be known as harm reduction internationally. It was as a result of this and other work that I found myself in the Healthy Cities Planning Group in Copenhagen in 1986, and was asked to be the project coordinator by Dr. Ilona Kickbush. However, Healthy Cities did not begin in Copenhagen in 1986. Its true origins being much further back in time and intimately bound up in the Victorian public health movement which the Minister has just referred to. Faced with rapid urbanisation and mass migration as part of the industrialisation process, slum areas with very dense populations living in squalid housing provided ideal conditions for epidemics, not least of them the cholera, especially in port cities such as Liverpool. In England, Edwin Chadwick coordinated a national survey of housing and health, published in 1842. It drew attention to the awful sanitary conditions and the death rates in the slum areas of even the wealthiest towns and cities. The evidence submitted to Chadwick included that from Dr. William Duncan of Liverpool that described earth-floored, airless cellar dwellings with no sanitation, accommodating upwards of 40 people. This situation was to be greatly compounded later in the decade by the arrival of 300,000 Irish peasant refugees fleeing from the potato famine in Ireland. 60 to 80,000 of them came to stay in Liverpool wherever they could find a place to sleep, at a time when the town's population was around 120,000. Inevitably, an epidemic of cholera was just around the corner, and when it arrived in 1848, December into 1849, it took the lives of 5,245 people in this town. 5,245 compared to the 3,955 deaths from Ebola in the 2014 outbreak in Sierra Leone. Following the publication of the Chadwick report, the great and the good, church leaders and politicians, together with the business leaders and some early trade unionists, were galvanized into action. An immediate outcome was a campaigning organisation, the Health of Towns Association, which was launched on the 11th of December, 1844, at a public meeting on the Strand in London. Historian Finer describes it as an avowed propagandist body of capital importance. It's now the Strand Palace Hotel. I can see it from the window by my public health desk at Westminster City Council. Following that first meeting, Branches were quickly formed in Edinburgh, Liverpool, Manchester, York, Halifax, Bath, Rugby, Marlborough, Walsall, Plymouth and Worcester. The local bodies collected and disseminated facts, organised public lectures and petitioned Parliament for sanitary reform and for enhanced powers for local government for public health. In this city, the Mayor convened a meeting in the Music Hall in Seal Street to form a local branch. A feature in the local newspaper, the Liverpool Mercury, describes the attendance at this first meeting as not large but highly respectable, including all sects of religion and all parties in politics. The meeting included Dr. Duncan, who was soon to become the first City Medical Officer of Health in the country, as well as members of the Society for the Promotion of Trade, who were concerned that businesses would be put off investing in the town if it was prone to epidemics. The success of the association can be judged by the fact that in 1848, the first Public Health Act reached the statute book, giving local authorities the powers they needed to raise the necessary local tax for public health measures and to appoint their own medical officers of health. As we celebrate 170 years since the 1848 Act, and with public health in England restored in small part to local government, we now have an over-centralisation of public health into a remote national agency, Public Health England. It's time to take stock. There's not been a comprehensive Public Health Act since before Second World War. Public health funding and resources in local authorities are being steadily cut, and there is still no commemorative plaque on the Strand Palace Hotel. 2018 is very much a year of anniversaries when it comes to public health. In addition to 1848, we are remembering the end of the First World War, which brought with it some of the earlier public health initiatives here in England in the form of Homes for Heroes and a short-lived health centre building programme. The National Health Service itself can be seen as, at least in part, as a public health measure, despite the distorting effect of the disproportionate power of hospitals. And the WHO, as a United Nations organisation, was part of a suite of initiatives to act as a resource for health development and a buffer against international conflict. So too was the European Iron and Steel Federation, which was to evolve into the European Union. As for healthy cities, it's turned out to be an important part of refocusing health and social care back to its roots in public health. It's taken WHO's strategy of Health for All by the year 2000 off the shelves and into the streets of Europe and way beyond. With the globalization of economies, with a possible Brexit looming and a world crisis in governance and world leadership, the leadership role of cities and city regions in protecting health and well-being now seems more important than ever. Last week in Belfast, WHO launched the latest 7th phase of Healthy Cities, which links it to the United Nations Sustainable Development Goals for 2030 and aims to secure mass leadership from city mayors and elected leaders. This follows on from a summit of city mayors and the endorsement of a consensus statement in Copenhagen this February. The immediate aim is to secure the commitment of 20,000 mayors to owning the City Health Development Agenda by 2020, organising around 6 strategic themes that derive from the Sustainable Development Goals. They are people and place, participation and prosperity, peace and the planet. Later this month in Kazakhstan, we will be celebrating the 40th anniversary of the Alma-Ata Declaration, and we will be launching a new network of healthy cities covering the cities in the countries of Central Asia which straddle the new Silk Belt and Road being developed by China from the Far East to Europe. As cities around the world feel the strength from acting in concert, I hope you will find ways to be part of this exciting and energized work. In the meantime, please explore our city and meet our people and places as you make new friendships and refresh your thinking. Today, I took a group on a public health walk which explored some of these aspects together with the buildings of Liverpool, and I'd encourage you to consider replicating this device for teaching public health in your own place when you go home. I'd just like to finish with a poem by the late Adrian Hendry, great personal friend, celebrated Liverpool poet and artist, who was a great friend of public health and a long-time collaborator in public health teaching here in Liverpool. The poem is called City 2000. It was written by Adrian as a gift to healthy cities in Liverpool. In this city, filled with the sound of alarm bells, police sirens howl like animals mating. Vagrants huddle together in cardboard cities. In a damp bedsit, a girl dreams visions of Patmos. Cool white spaces, the dusk gleam of an icon, the night written in dripping white on a railway wall. Swarming city, city full of dreams. In this city, the sound of the bulldozer is banished from the land. Swinging custodial sentences imposed on anyone designing a building finished in shuttered concrete. Car parks burst into flower. Narcissi, blue flags, lilies of the valley, pushing up through the tarmac. The streets heaped with yellow marigolds. All planning decisions are referred to the postman Ferdinand Cheval, Charles Rennie Mackintosh, and Anthony Gaudi speaking through a medium. This city, no longer an embarrassment. The too much loved mother at the school speech day, lipstick blurred, smelling of gin and lime. As the sun rises over this city, your morning face on the pillow, through strands of dark brown hair, the river lying open to the day, the lace curtains of terrace houses sing like school children. This city is your mother and your lover. She is your first thought and your last. She is your future and your past. Thank you very much, Jim.
Thank you very much. Thank you very much to John Ashton. And if you haven't yet had the opportunity of a public health walk, I do encourage you to go on one. So it's now my pleasure to invite Anthony Costello to the dinner table we have here with his guests. So Anthony Costello is a professor from University College London, and up until March this year, he was also Director of Maternal, Child and Adolescent Health at the World Health Organization. And he will introduce you to his panelists, and they will have a discussion on the integrated and indivisible SDGs, getting multisectoral action right. Let's give them a hand.
Thank you very much. Is the mic on? Yeah. Thank you very much. It's great to be in Liverpool. Thank you so much for inviting us to this wonderful symposium. Liverpool, the home of the Beatles, of Cilla Black, the inspiration for George Orwell's The Road to Wigan Pier, and of course got an absolutely incredible football team in Tranmere Rovers. I've got a fabulous group here who are going to join us for this discussion about the SDGs. I've got Maureen Samms-Vaughan, who is Professor of Child Health and of Child Development at the University of Jamaica, who's run some incredibly successful Jamaican birth cohorts and has influenced policy in all kinds of ways in her country on parenting, on violence, of course on early childhood development across sectors and on broadcasting. We have David Stuckler, who is an economist originally, but professor of policy analysis and public management at Bocconi in Milan, in Italy. He's an author. He's written a great book called Body Politic, How Austerity Kills. And he's written on the origins of NCDs, on Europe, on big food, and on the Greek crisis. and delighted also to have Evelyn Kandakai, who is our Minister of Education from Liberia, or former Minister of Education in Liberia, who's had experience, obviously coming from another sector. She's an educationalist, a researcher, and she's had a huge influence on policy in the West African region. So what's our aim of this discussion over the next 40 minutes is to look beyond universal health coverage and financial protection to act on the much more complex social, economic, political, commercial, environmental, and cultural determinants of health. So 40 minutes should do it, shouldn't it? Yeah. And the question is, how are we going to deliver integrated and indivisible SDGs? So I'd just like to start by setting the scene a little bit. A year ago in Geneva, my brother-in-law, who is the chief executive of a $2 billion company, came out to Geneva with his sister, my wife, Helen, and I wanted to impress them. And in the car, I said, Helen, did you ever imagine in your wildest dreams that one day I would be a director at WHO? And she said, darling, in my wildest dreams, you don't feature. Which I thought was a little unfair, actually. But anyway, I took John into the foyer of the World Health Organization, and he looked up, and on the wall was a fantastic, you know, the circle of the 17 SDGs. He said, what's that? I said, it's the Sustainable Development Goals. He said, are they crazy? 17 goals. There should never be more than 5. So I think that sets the scene a little bit that actually we do have a marketing challenge. But as we've heard from our previous speakers, we have other challenges. Now, a lot of people, the impatient optimists, the rational optimists, all think everything's getting better. And there's some evidence for that. In my lifetime, we've seen mortality rates fall, literacy rates go up, poverty rates fall, and the like. But we are in I think there is another side to this. On the economic front, we've seen since the financial crisis, the wealthiest quintile in almost every major economy cream off all the profits, and the poorest quintile have got worse, much worse off. And in this city of Liverpool, we've seen a 10-fold increase in use of food banks, huge increase in 0 hours contracts. And in the UK, the 5th richest country in the world, there are 4.5 million children living in poverty. So economically, we have a challenge. Politically, we've heard the rise of nationalism, of leaders who embrace fake news, fascists, and sexual harassers, the rise of anocracy and corruption across the world. Commercially, we know about the unregulated big industries, big alcohol, big food, big tobacco, big finance. The NCD epidemics we'll talk about, the fact that many companies put profits before people and indeed infringe children's rights because children are exposed to advertising which they may not understand and take to be literally true. And finally, just to top it off, to be a bit miserable, before we get more optimistic, we had the environmental report from the IPCC this week, all talking about how it's going to be difficult to reach 1.5 degrees. Hopefully we can reach just 2 degrees of warming. I don't think anyone mentioned the Nature paper from 7 months ago that showed that actually we're on course with 93% confidence that we're going to hit 4 degrees this century, which is catastrophic. So our species extinction will be televised. Right, on that note, just to make you feel suicidal, let's come back to multisectoral action. And let me start, because we have to do it across sectors, don't we? But it's difficult. So the first is why, Maureen, from your perspective, you've had huge experience in early childhood development. Why do we need multisectoral action to improve child development?
Well, the different agencies of government see children at different points in their lives. And we have done this for some time now. Health started the early childhood bit, they did, because we measure perinatal mortality rates, we measure infant mortality rates, we do immunization at this point in time, and we do growth measures. We've done great in reducing malnutrition, and in immunizing kids. Our immunization rates worldwide are great. But what we haven't done so well is that we haven't stimulated children's development. And in order for us to do this, we need to capitalize on the improvements that the health sector has done in those early years. We now recognize how important the first few years of life are, but they're not just important for health. They're important for violence prevention, which damages the brain if it happens very early. They're important for stimulation. They're important for child protection. So we need all the sectors working together. Health has a monopoly right now on the prenatal period and on the birth to 3 period, because health, the Ministry of Health all across the world are the state agencies. This is a state agency that is seeing kids and families. Education doesn't see them until a little bit later. Preschool education all across the world is running about 60%, the world rates. World rates of immunization are 90%. So health has gotten it right in terms of when to start. What we haven't gotten it so right about is how to make that comprehensive, how to introduce all those other aspects into the health sector, into well child care, into community and public health. That's what we need to get right.
What would be your priorities if you're in a lift with Minister Burt, or say from Jamaica, the minister? What would you could say 3 things. What would be your priorities for action across sectors?
Across sectors, I would say the first thing we have to get right is the governance aspects, because everything else flows down from that. And we have not yet created good structures across agencies for us to work well. Yeah. It just hasn't happened so well yet. And unless we do things right there, because then what we expect is that professionals are going to work together. How are we going to work together? Nobody has ever taught us to work together. Right. We train nurses here, we train doctors here, we train educators here, we train social workers here. We never try to train them together, and we never train them in multisectoral work. So everybody works in their silos, and we're all working with the same group of children. I'm going to focus on children. I'm a pediatrician. I'm going to focus on kids. Because the same kids who have undernutrition are the same kids who are probably less immunized, who are probably the same kids who are exposed to violence. And so we have different bits working with the same group of kids. It's an awful waste of money. And until we get it right in terms of governance, that multisectoralism is the way to go, we're always going to be wasting money. And we have too little money, especially in low and middle income countries, to waste it in that way.
Okay, thank you. Let's move to Evelyn. And I mean, you're from a different sector. You're from education. You were the Minister for Education in Liberia. Why do you need to cross sectors? And what does health offer the Education Ministry?
Good, thank you very much. Let me join our moderator in thanking you for being here and for your keen attention to this panel discussion. I was fortunate to be with Professor Theobald in February 2018, where we went to Harper in Maryland County, Liberia, which is very near the Ivory Coast. There's a river there called the Kavala River, which separates the Ivory Coast from Liberia. So we went there to a celebration of leprosy. Leprosy. I was going to say literacy. Leprosy Day, International Leprosy Day. And there were a lot of, the most interesting part, I'm just thinking, the most interesting were those, call them victims or patients in that parade. But anyway, when we were coming back, she asked me whether I would like to come to this forum and be here now. I said yes, and I want to thank her and Professor Hansen and all for my presence here. On the question of priorities with respect to education, which I'm here for because I work at the Ministry of Education at the West African Exams Council from 2015 to 2018 March, and as the ambassador for neglected tropical diseases at the Ministry of Health in Liberia. I think one of the major educational priorities is what is known as a minimum level of education for all. This minimum level of education for all is kind of two-tracked. One track will definitely go on for further education. There are a lot of people who do not go on for further education, but we want them to have this minimum level of education. Unfortunately, there may be a third track who never go to school at all. But I think that the health workers and other development workers can work with all across the board now, further education, or just to get what they want to do across through those that only have this minimum level of education, like community people and so forth. A second group I would like to bring to your attention is, in terms of priorities, is a group that I would say were discriminated against in the past. In 1992, a group of African women ministers of education founded an organization called FAWE, Forum for African Women Educationalists. And this organization was in favor of what they call, or whom they call, the girl child. Unfortunately, in Africa, and maybe in many parts of the world, the boy child is the preferred child. So since that time, the Forum for African Women Educationalists, FAWE, and many others who have followed their work, many other development partners have been doing work in favor of the girl child. So this is in favor of health and also of development, because as we know, if girls are at the bottom of the tier, then they will be the last to be looked at. So development-wise and health-wise, and of course especially education-wise, this has been very important. Priority-wise, with respect to the theme, I want to point out two sets of programs. One of them is called the Kigali Initiative. There is as a result of the coming into being of the SDGs, a number of activities have come about, a number of centers, programs, and so forth. So in Kigali, there's a center called the SDG Center. But that center, with, I think, the government of Rwanda, in 2017, brought together African vice chancellors and university people and said, we want you to raise the quality of raise quality education to a higher level in Africa, so that we can achieve the Sustainable Development Goals. So that's one initiative known as the Kigali Initiative that is ongoing. I would also like to point out what the African Union has done, which is they have come up with something called Agenda 2063, and this also shows the multi-sectoral approach to these SDGs, and they have come up with a kind of transformative program to achieve the SDGs in Africa by 2063. So let me stop there, and I will.
Lovely.
Yeah.
Thank you very much. That's great. David, NCDs, you've written about them. That's an area where the health sector is really struggling. And why? I mean, it seems almost self-evident that multisectoral action. What do you think are the priorities? What's your view on that?
Yeah, thanks for bringing that up. It really struck me listening to Maureen and Evelyn. We have one of the most frustrating things as researchers is when we have clear evidence about programs that can work on early childhood development or on empowering women as vital levers of sustainable development. And yet, time and again, they don't happen. We can show they're cost-effective, we can show the long-term whole-of-society benefits, and ultimately, we confront, whether they're visible or not, powerful vested interests who keep them off the table. And that's really true power, is not just getting things on the table, but the ability to keep them off. What I deal a lot with in my work, and nowhere is this more clear, is with tobacco. Money spent on tobacco in developing countries is the same as taking food out of a child's mouth. It's been estimated that spending on tobacco is equal to about 150 calories per child less intake today in developing settings. And we've got a framework convention, the first time the global community has come together using its legal powers to stop the harms of tobacco. And yet we're in a world where we've all agreed on what to do, and less than 10% of the world's children are benefiting from those policies that we know work. And so for me, when it comes to SDGs, empowering women, this conversation is one about power. And I think for us to get serious in global health, we have to get serious of power and its imbalances among us.
So you mentioned tobacco, and tobacco is almost universally thought of as a bad product. You know, but food is not. We all quite like eating. But we're all eating a bit too much, and we're eating the wrong stuff, and we're having it promoted to us all the time. What do we do about that?
I mean, the rapid rise of childhood obesity, the scale of which is a pandemic, is alarming. Mexico now has the second highest rate of childhood obesity in the world, only to the United States. I live in Italy now, famous for a Mediterranean diet, and it now has top 5 rates of childhood obesity in the world. Our food systems are transforming at a rate that's virtually unprecedented. Coming back to where I was born in the United States, our food system is not a cluster of small farmers and small producers, as a bourgeois dream likes to point out. We don't have lots of local little food markets like we find here on Albert Dock, nice as it would be. In the United States, just 10 food companies are attributable for half of what Americans eat on their plates. We have a very concentrated, powerful sector, and they lobby heavily. Taking one example on sugar-sweetened beverages, they lobby heavily against the measures that would be effective, such as increasing taxes or better labeling in curbing the rise in excess calories. It's a big conversation to have, but clearly the rise of childhood obesity shows us, on one hand, that childhood obesity is rising, and we have stubborn malnutrition. That means 1/3 of our world's diets are inadequate. Our food system's broken.
Do we need more nasty lawyers, do you think? Because, no, seriously, I mean, at WHO, I always felt there were thousands of doctors and we're all, you know, hierarchical and all that. But there were not enough nasty lawyers because we've got to hit the companies where it hurts. And, you know, this point about infringing children's rights is an important one because the psychologists say up until about 8, they can't distinguish between an advert and the truth. And we're bombarding them with all of this. And I feel sorry for poor mothers in Toxteth who are going down the road and everywhere there's confectionery and there's nowhere to buy any fresh vegetables.
Yeah, I've been in countries, the price of Coca-Cola is cheaper than the price of milk. I mean, the battles on tobacco played out in the courtrooms. I anticipate eventually we'll reach a similar point with food. But you just mentioned to confront power, if you want to kill a snake, you've got to chop off its head. Power's in the finance.
Yeah.
And again, turning to tobacco, because if we haven't been able to establish a healthy world free of tobacco, we have a much longer way to go in that conversation with food, with alcohol, with firearms, with cosmetics, other products.
But the WHO Child Obesity Strategy was put up as a resolution, and I sat in Geneva listening to 25 countries stand up and say how great it was, and one country vetoed it.
Yeah.
That shall remain nameless.
Yes,
But
Maureen.
then I'm tacking on to the childhood obesity, but then power in government, there is some power in government. And I'm going to use Jamaica as an example. The Caribbean Moves that was launched at the UN recently, it started off with a Minister of Health who became convinced about reducing NCDs in Jamaica. And he decided that Jamaica was going to move. And the slogan is Jamaica Moves. It's now become Caribbean Moves. And at the UN, they had people moving at almost all of the beginning of the UN General Assembly sessions. And we had in Jamaica a company that really was upset that the Minister of Health intended to put a tax on sugary drinks. And he hasn't implemented it yet. He said when it's going to happen. And a couple of the drink companies got really upset, and they started writing in the newspaper. And then everybody started taking them on. Talk shows are very powerful in Jamaica.
Exactly.
And everybody started taking them on. The next thing we knew is that, you know, some of the companies are pulling back, and they are now launching lower sugar content food. So there's power in government if you have people who are willing to stand up and make a decision. And I think that's one of the areas where we really have to work. And we have to ensure that we provide the information and that we can convince the powers that be in government. Our Minister of Health is not a physician. No. He became convinced about the importance of NCDs to the country and the cost to the country, and decided to go at it in a particular way.
No, actually, that's a good point about, it's not just about the negative and the regulation of being accused of being a nanny state and all of that. I mean, that's really important, and you do need nasty lawyers, but you also need a very positive viewpoint from ministers about creating an environment where you can walk and exercise, and where you can get access to fresh vegetables. And a lot of the TV shows are into healthy eating and stuff like that. So there is the positive. We'll come back to some of the models we have to talk about. I want to move on. The second is the constraints to multisectoral action, because although we can talk nicely about it, the difficulties that I'm sure many people in this audience will know about of trying to get the health ministry to talk to the education ministry, to the transport ministry. I'd like to start with you, Evelyn, because you had to do this, and you were in cabinet for 8 years. To what extent did you, as an educational minister, get buy-in from other ministries to help what you were doing, or vice versa, help what they were doing? Or was that difficult?
Thank you very much. First, generically, I want to talk about some of the constraints in general, then I will get to his point. Generically, I think some of the constraints in my country they were very obvious. A post-conflict country when I was, if I can still a post-conflict country, I was minister from 1997, and so we were trying to get the educational system back on track. So obviously, conflict is not a friend to this kind of multi-sectoral action and so forth. And also, there are a lot of plans that we develop, post-conflict, that we do not implement. The plans are just shelved, okay? And then there are a lot of gaps. Some of them, like the governance gaps, have been highlighted already. Gender is another gap. The digital divide and other divides. But with respect to getting other ministries involved, I was very, I would say, lucky to have other ministries involved in, let's say, working towards free primary education, where in some less fortunate communities, the Justice Ministry would work along with us, or if you were having some consultations to work towards free primary education, you had to have all ministries involved. It's not a matter of doing something like that just by yourself. And of course, the finance minister had to be a very good friend of the ministry, because like everyone knows, you can hardly, it's very difficult to navigate from funds that are allocated to funds that are delivered to you. So I did have a lot of assistance and cooperation from other ministries and from the development partners. The development partners are very instrumental and were very instrumental in getting Liberia's educational system back on track. And the Minister of Health at the time, who was a person called Dr. Peter Coleman, we worked very closely together on many other health issues.
Do you think personal chemistry was important? I mean, in cabinets must be places where there are sharp elbows and, you know, rivals and stuff. Did you find that, I mean, I don't think you were perhaps that ambitious kind of politician trying to be the president, but did you find that there were certain ministers that you got on much better with and therefore you worked them and others you didn't really like?
Well, like I just mentioned, health. I think the ministries that are more like development-oriented, health, education, and so forth might tend to work together. And and those that honor certain pillars, like, you know, infrastructure and so might work together. So I didn't find that kind of rivalry, except maybe for funding. When I was talking about getting 25%, it was like a joke. So, but other than that, yeah.
David, what's your view on all of this about constraints? I mean, you've written a book about austerity. Is that a massive constraint to whatever ambitions we have? Because the whole economic principle of our neoliberal capitalist system is perhaps misguided.
That's a big one. I remember, you made me think of one of the first global health conferences I ever went to was with the Oxford Health Alliance about 15 years ago. And the public health folks in the room were making the case of how investing in health had a return on investment. Yeah. And I was, at the time, at the back of the room, always ducking in and out, and I overheard some economists saying, shaking their heads to themselves, saying, these public health yo-yos don't know the first thing about global finance. And it was as though even with the public health people in the room trying to speak the language of finance, they were having parallel conversations that just weren't syncing with the conversation happening in the global finance community, who were invited and hanging out in the back with me at the conference. So I found it very concerning, and you know, as I did more studies, I found much of low and middle income countries have been under a setting of fiscal constraint. On one hand, we have the SDGs, before that we had the MDGs, but with the left hand, we've had budget pressures from bailouts of highly indebted countries that came with strings attached to keep spending low, that led to conditions such as freezing the salaries of nurses and doctors. We've had a clear example recently in Europe with Greece that came under, it's an example we understand, that Greece had its needle syringe programs frozen and cut, and it led to the return of HIV. It had mosquito spraying programs cut that led to the return of malaria, which had thought to have been eradicated, and we documented a range of problems. That might seem alarming here, but that's been a reality for decades in sub-Saharan Africa and Latin America and East Asia. So yes, I think there is a macroeconomic framework that it's on us to challenge, or in the health system, we end up picking up the pieces.
Does it worry you that everyone's talking about private finance and innovative financing, to quote the Director General of the World Bank and the Global Fund, who are saying this is the big new future? Does that concern you that citizens in countries are going to suddenly have their health services courtesy of Goldman Sachs, and that they're going to be turned from citizens into commodities?
It's a deeply distressing prospect. I think there's sometimes great enthusiasm for technological gizmos, and I put financial schemes to be a silver bullet to solve problems. We say, oh, we've got lots of mobile phones in these settings, but we don't have toilets or basic sanitation and infrastructure. And that may not be sexy to talk about. How do we deal with tax reform to get a stable public finance base to accelerate coverage to universal health for all? That's much less exciting than the latest financial gizmo if we could create a derivative that will somehow incentivize health. I just remain circumspect. I'd like to see, I'd like to dream and believe it would work, but so often, again, I find that that's the conversation that gets on the table. Recall I mentioned about power keeping things off, and the sanitation, the hygiene, that infrastructure, it's not exciting, it's not sexy, and doesn't make it on the table.
It's not to say I'm against social bonds in its entirety, and I'm sure many of you will be talking about that this week, but I would like to see some evidence. And it does concern me that a lot of the gangsters that created the biggest Ponzi scheme in history and the world financial crisis, many of whom should go to prison, are actually the people pushing a lot of this, and it is ideological in my view. But that's just my personal opinion. Right. What else about the difficulty of actually making multisectoral action work? Were there times, for example, that you wanted more on the benefit system or in the educational system to come to your help to ensure that children were getting a better break, or tax breaks? Or?
Yes, definitely there were. I wanted to come back to your talk about the personalities, because you see, for us, personalities change quite a bit. Ministers can change around quite a bit. And while on an individual basis, when they're there, you have to make sure that you work with them and meet their needs. It's so important to get them to fix things in law that can't easily be changed. And what we did in Jamaica with the early childhood sector was that we had them fix the Early Childhood Commission in law. Once it was fixed in law, and one of its legal remits was multisectoral collaboration, then we had the power, given that was our legal remit, we had the power to then move across the ministries, not necessarily working with the ministers, but working with the persons who were actually, the technical persons, who were actually going to come together. And I think that is important, that we set these things firmly so that we can
So it was
build
being
on them.
incentivized from the top. So was the Prime Minister saying, I want you to work across?
No, the Prime Minister said, I want the Early Childhood Commission to exist.
Right.
And the Early Childhood Commission stated we can't work unless we work across sectors.
Yeah.
And so that was put in the law, that one of our main functions was to pull all the sectors together. Once that is our legal remit, then we can do what we have to do afterwards without the need to constantly be going back and forth to ministers.
So how high up the Jamaican or the Liberian political agenda are the SDGs? Because I remember the minister from South Africa, Motsoaledi, said it wasn't really until about 2009, 2010 that they took the MDGs seriously. And then they had to pull their finger out to really make it happen.
No, not Jamaica.
Jamaica.
SDGs are really, really high.
They're really high.
Really high on our agenda. Yeah, we have meetings. We just did a report on the status of our SDGs. No, they're pretty high. All the social commentators are talking about them. It's part of the language in the country now. Yeah.
What's the government in Jamaica? What political hue? Left, right, centre?
They're pretty center right now.
Okay. Liberia.
Liberia and SDGs.
Yeah.
Okay. Our former president was part of the formation of the SDGs. I don't know. I don't think that means that we just, fine with it over there. But there are, manifestations of people working with the SDGs on the ground. I also heard that there's an SDG center that is coming to Liberia. So there will be an actual place there to do that. But as far as knowing the SDGs, you can't be in Monrovia and not know the SDGs, because there's a UN office there that you have to drive by every day. Yeah. The 17 goals are just the 17 goals are just there.
Well, your current president used to play football at Anfield, didn't he? Because
He used to play football well. Where?
at Anfield, the Liverpool football ground. George Weah, of course, who was World Footballer of the Year, is now president of Liberia. Fantastic player. Is he a fantastic president?
That's a loaded question.
I don't know whether when you're a fantastic player, you automatically become a fantastic president. But let me get back to our SDG.
What a great politician.
Our SDGs and our neglected tropical diseases.
Yeah.
And I told you that, I was trying to tell you that the Liverpool School of Tropical Medicine spares no effort, goes a very long way, a long distance to do what it wants to do. And so in Liberia, they have a program with the Neglected Tropical Diseases Program, which I am ambassador for, and that's what has me here now. They have a countdown program, which is very much evidence-based and is research-based. And another aspect of this program related to what we are saying here is that our NTDS program is said to be integrated, which means that the diseases, the neglected tropical diseases are not, necessarily flown one by one. They're taking as a group to a large extent to deal with the whole situation financially and so forth. So relating that to the SDGs, I would think, from my own experience with the MDGs, which I have more experience with, the Millennium Development Goals, I think it would be very interesting if, like the MDGs, especially the one for education, they had a slogan, education for all. So if we have a slogan, sustainable development for all, I think that would reach to a lot of people, like individually and so forth, sustainable development for all.
Just in the last few minutes, or 2 minutes, one suggestion each for things that have worked well, that you think might have worked well. I'll give you one, which is, I think that the lower down the system, people are much more comfortable with crossing sectors. Ministries, it's difficult. Districts, it's a little bit more easy. If you get down to community groups, they're very happy to deal with environment, with water, with health, because it's all related to what they do. And I think we need much more science applied to the implementation of community engagement. And I've written a book out next month about the social edge. I advertise your book as well, actually, that's right. And Evelyn's writing a book, actually, which we'll await with interest next year.
Okay, thank you.
Have you got a book?
No, I seem to.
Okay. Right. One quick suggestion each. Who wants to go first on an example of where cross-sectoral action has really seemed to pay off and could be a model to be replicated?
Let me say something about what I learned from the West African Exams Council as a council member. There was a lot of research that was done there, and I'm talking about research. So when I saw all this research, I said, why don't we use, I was telling them, why don't we ask universities to come in and we disseminate the research to the universities. They'll get to know more about the West African Exams Council, which is an external examining body, and not just a mystical place. And we will also be helping our universities to raise their own profile in terms of their ranking, because research is very interesting to, very relevant to university ranking. So when I also got to the Neglected Tropical Diseases Program, I also saw that there was a lot of research going on there too. So the same thought occurred to me. Here am I now an ambassador. I need to promote the NTDs, but I can also help to promote the NTDs through the universities, through this dissemination of the research and so forth and so on. And in the same vein, a lot of Ebola research has been done. So there's Ebola research. Similarly, we could also see how we can disseminate the research through the universities, thereby mentoring them to get them know more about what we are doing and to also get them to do more research.
Thank you. We're almost out of time. So just in 20, 30 seconds, David and then Maureen. Or Maureen, do you want to go first?
Yeah, I'm going to say that most people know about the early childhood sector more than any other sector of childhood right now. And that's because the early childhood sector has really taken on the cross-sectoral bit. Everybody knows about ECD now and knows about its impact because we have learned how to work together and we have learned how to do research together and we have learned how to show that our research impacts more than one area of development. So I think early childhood development sector has gotten it right. We're not perfect.
No.
Definitely not. But I think that we've got something that works.
Good, thank you. David?
Just on commercial determinants, did any of you watch Formula One? There was just a big launch in Milan, and you know, when you hear the screeching of the wheels and smell the burning of the rubber, smoke clears and you finally see the winners up at the podium, you know, cracking champagne, fizz going everywhere. But then if you look a little closer, what really strikes you is that these players' jerseys are saturated with logos. Pirelli, McDonald's, Coca-Cola, everybody who sponsors them. And when I was watching the recent Senate hearings, all I could imagine was what if everybody in that room were like the Formula One drivers wearing all the logos? What would our conversation look like?
Multisectoral.
Yeah.
And so I want to use the tools of epidemiology to bring to the light these powerful hidden vested interests that are putting things on the table and keeping things off, to shine a light in the dark corners
So
of
if you have a
global health.
conflict of interest, everyone has their logo on.
Absolutely.
At Liverpool, wouldn't that be brilliant? Anyway, I'm so sorry we're out of time. That's 40 minutes up, but a huge thank you to our panel.
I have one more thing to say. Then let me go.
Thank you. We are now moving to our final closing act, and I'm delighted to introduce to you Movima. Movima is a dynamic Liverpool-based company specializing in promoting the benefits of world dance for everyone, celebrating Liverpool's diverse culture through our artistically driven world dance provision. So Movima was established by 4 female artists from different creative and cultural backgrounds. They provide workshops, professional and community performances and events. And since 2009, they have improved health and well-being of over 12,000 people, most in need. And Movima's mission is to effect positive change in deprived communities through re-energizing body and mind and bringing people together to celebrate our similarities and our differences through the creative experience. So, join me in welcoming Movima.
Cheguei, meu povo, cheguei pra vadiar.
Cheguei, meu povo, cheguei pra vadiar.
Cheguei, meu povo, cheguei pra vadiar.
Cheguei, meu povo,
Sou eu a nação estrela, não prometo pra faltar.
Sou eu a nação estrela, não prometo pra faltar.
Sou eu a nação estrela, não prometo pra faltar.
Sou eu a nação estrela, não prometo pra faltar.
Cheguei, meu povo, cheguei pra vadiar.
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 Sou eu a nação estrela, não prometo pra faltar.
Sou eu a nação estrela, não prometo pra faltar.
Sou eu a nação estrela, não prometo pra faltar.
Sou eu a nação estrela, não prometo pra faltar.
Cheguei, meu povo, cheguei pra vadiar.
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 Sou eu a nação estrela, não prometo pra faltar.
Sou eu a nação estrela, não prometo pra faltar.
Sou eu a nação estrela, não prometo pra faltar.
Sou eu a nação estrela, não prometo pra faltar.
Cheguei, meu povo, cheguei pra vadiar.
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 Sou eu a nação estrela, não prometo pra faltar.
Sou eu a nação estrela, não prometo pra faltar.
Sou eu a nação estrela, não prometo pra faltar.
Sou eu a nação estrela, não prometo pra faltar. Maria, como vai você?
Vai você, vai você.
Dona Maria, como vai você?
Joga bonito que eu quero aprender.
Dona Maria, como vai você?
Vai você, como vai você?
Dona Maria, como vai você?
Dá, dá, dá no negro você não dá.
Dá no negro.
Mas se der vai apanhar.
Dá no negro.
Você não dá.
Dá no negro.
O nego para cima, deixa o nego adiar.
Dá no negro.
No negro você não dá.
Dá no negro.
Mas se der vai apanhar.
Dá no negro.
Eu pisei na folha seca, vim fazer chuê-chuá. Chuê-chuê-chuê-chuá.
Eu vim fazer chuê-chuá.
Chuê-chuê-chuê-chuá.
Eu vim fazer chuê-chuá.
Chuê-chuê-chuê-chuá.
Eu vim fazer chuê-chuá.
Chuê-chuê-chuê-chuá.
Eu vim fazer chuê-chuá.
Chuê-chuê-chuê-chuá.
Eu vim fazer chuê-chuá.
Eu pisei na folha seca, vim fazer chuê-chuá. Chuê-chuê-chuê-chuá.
Eu vim fazer chuê-chuá.
Chuê-chuê-chuê-chuá.
Eu vim fazer chuê-chuá.
É de manhã e Dalina tá me chamando. E Dalina tem um costume de chamar, a gente vai andando.
É de manhã, Dalina tá me chamando.
E Dalina, meu amor, e Dalina tá me esperando.
É de manhã, Dalina tá me chamando.
E Dalina tem um costume de mandar a gente sair andando.
É de manhã, Dalina tá me chamando.
E Dalina tem um costume danado de falar de homem.
É de manhã, Dalina tá me chamando.
E Dalina, meu amor, e Dalina tá me esperando.
É de manhã, Dalina tá me chamando.
E Dalina tem um costume danado de falar de homem.
É de manhã, Dalina tá me chamando.
E Dalina, meu amor, e Dalina tá me esperando.
É de manhã, Dalina tá me chamando.
E Dalina tem um costume danado de falar de homem.
Tana derena dim tana dim tana gum tana derena dim tana dim gum tana derena dim tana dim tana gum tana derena dim gum tana derena tana dim derena gum tana derena tana dim derena gum tana derena tana dim derena gum tana derena tana dim ni bala gamari gum tana derena dim tana dim tana gum tana
Thank you to the fantastic movement. Yay! And always great to have audience participation. Let's hope we have lots more of that throughout the week. I think we can truly see that HSR 2018 is open, and I would now like to invite all of you to please join the welcome reception. There will be drink, there will be food, there will be music, and what you need to do is to exit, follow the signage, go downstairs, and you will find the welcome reception. Please do all join us. Thank you very much.